Hey, what is up guys? My name is Stan, and in this video, we're gonna be taking a look at the EK Vertical GPU Mount that I got right here. This is one of two mounts that EK makes, and this is specifically designed to help you mount your GPU in a vertical format in your case. All right, so I've got the EK Loop Vertical GPU Mount out of the box. This is the shifted version. So there's two versions. There's the non-shifted version and there's the shifted version. If you've got a case with the PCIe brackets already there and you can't really remove it, so it's not a big empty space, then you need something like this. That's the shifted, which basically shifts the GPU in so that you can thread everything through without cutting your case, essentially. They also include a special Displayport cable. You can see here, this is a 45-degree cable, which kind of lets you thread it through so that you can make it through the PCIe bracket gap openings. With this kit here, we also have a PCIe cable. This right here, this is a PCIe 3.0 cable. So unfortunately, it's not gonna be officially 4.0 compatible. I'm gonna have to see how well this performs. Maybe it is 4.0 compatible, maybe it isn't. We'll just have to take a look. There is no officially 4.0 cable or available with this kit. So if you buy this kit, you may have to get another 4.0 cable on Amazon. So why do you buy this kit? There's many different kits out there. There's, I think, one from Cable Mod, there's one from Thermaltake. All of these vertical kits, this included, is made out of stamped steel. But this right here, this is very, very thick stamped steel, and it got a very robust feel to it. The other reason why I picked this up was because once you assemble it, there is a bracket here that actually screws onto the motherboard or as support. So it's very, very robust, and there's really no flex at all. So it's a little bit pricier than the other brackets, vertical GPU holders out there, but I think it's one of the better quality or better made ones. And you'll see what I mean once we get this thing installed. So this is basically assembled here, and you can see here, this goes into the PCIe, the back panel, and these two screws right here, we've got a couple longer screws that thread through here, and this right here actually mounts into the motherboard. You know, the motherboard, bottom right-hand corner, we've got a couple screws, and you take out those screws and you actually mount this directly onto the motherboard. So what you have essentially is, you know, this side is bolted down to the back of the case, right? And this side also is bolted down to the motherboard, and effectively your motherboard and your case is basically not gonna, or your GPU isn't gonna move, because once your GPU is all screwed in, it's not going anywhere. So that is basically what this is gonna look like. And effectively, once you have your GPU all mounted in here, this is kind of how it should look sitting in your case. You can see here the bracket is installed, and because we're screwed in on this side right here, and we've got a screw that passes through to the motherboard tray here and here, this bracket is basically bolted in and it's not going anywhere at all. Now, because the screw locations are standard ATX, and this is adjustable up and down, you can find it's basically compatible with most motherboards out there. And because I have got a motherboard tray, it's actually very easy for me to manipulate this thing, and I actually can bolt my GPU onto this thing and carry my whole motherboard and GPU all in one and slide it into the computer, which is kind of nice. But even if you didn't have a motherboard tray, you could screw it into the motherboard and still have it work as intended. Now the PCIe cable, you can see here I've got it all installed, and it's a single braid PCIe cable, so it's a single section. I would have liked to see it in multiple sections. It kind of looks a little bit better and it's a little bit more flexible. This is actually very hard and inflexible, but it works. There are 3 screws down here that are screwed in. So if you are looking for a replacement PCIe cable that's a 4.0 PCIe cable, then you have to make sure that you got 2 screws on the left side and 1 screw on the right side. What I do like about this clip is that it's one of those sliding clips, and you can see here, you can slide it left and right to lock it in instead of a push down clip. Once you get the GPU in, you can get in there and lock it in or unlock, and it's a lot easier to deal with than the push type of clips like I've got up here. The last thing I want to talk about is compatibility, and the slots right here, this bracket is only good for a 2-slot PCIe GPU. Now you can have a 2-slot PCIe, but maybe like a 2.5 or even a 3-slot cooler. As long as it's 2 slots, it's okay, because there's a little lip right here, and I am talking about maybe just like a 2mm high lip right here that prevents anything larger than a 2-slot from working. And what I mean by that is I've got a 3090 here, for example, and this is a true triple wide 3-slot GPU. And because this is, 3 slots on the PCIe brackets, it interferes right here. So if I were to try to bolt this in, what would happen is this right here would interfere with this right here. Now I could file this down or cut this down, but I really don't want to deal with that. And if I were to put this 3090 into this system, it would be with a water block, and the water block would also be a 1-slot water block. So I'm not too worried about that. Now, to show you guys how this would look, this is a 1080 Ti. This is a 1080 Ti with a water block on it. And you can see this is 1 slot, 1.5, basically 2-slot, your normal 2-slot PCIe bracket. And you could slot it in, make sure it's open. So there you go. You can screw it up right here and everything works. Now, one last thing to be aware of is the terminal. Depending on your water block terminal up here, if you have a very thick GPU, as long as it's not an active backplate or anything really, really, really thick on the backside, you should be okay. Now I've got everything installed here, and what I actually realized after I had installed it with the graphics card in there was that this bracket was actually a little bit too high. So what I mean by that is, with the graphics card sitting up here before, it was kind of blocking off the RGBs of the memory. So what I did was I dropped this bracket about 2 PCIe brackets down, and I unscrewed the screws here and re-screwed and reassembled it at the lower height. So these screw holes here are actually spaced out in PCIe intervals. So you can unscrew them and re-screw them in however you want, so that you get up to 2 PCIe heights worth of movement. And now I've basically dropped it to the very lowest level. It's kind of sitting right at the bottom of the motherboard now. And it's covering, or it's very close to the bottom USB cables and whatever, but there is a little bit of space between the motherboard and the bracket, so that's fine. And in this new position here, you can see this graphics card sits down here. See, now you can see this is basically what it looks like, all completely assembled. It's sitting completely below everything, and now it looks much more balanced out with the graphics card below all this upper stuff here. Now, one pro tip for you guys is before you actually mount the GPU into the bracket, just connect it to the supply cable with the 45-degree thing on this side, and then thread the connection through. That way you don't have to fiddle around with only a little bit of space you have after you've got the GPU mounted in place. So now you can mount the GPU in, and then from here, you can figure out how to actually thread this connection through so that you can get this connection the way you need. But make sure to connect the GPU first, otherwise there's really not enough space It's very, very difficult to manipulate the cable with that back there. So, you know, there you go. So yeah, that was just a quick look at the vertical EK GPU shifted mount. Again, if you have any questions, you can ask them down below and I'll try to answer them. And if this video was useful for you guys, make sure to hit that like button. And if you want to see the rest of this build as I put this all back into the system and get it all water tubed up with bronze metal tubing, then perhaps consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys in the next one.